Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. Welcome to today's episode of Wisdom Talk Radio, where we explore the depths of conscious living and what it truly means to live an expanded life. Join us to be inspired and encouraged and transformed, and hopefully to experience a deeper sense of joy and of meaning and of possibility. Wisdom comes in many forms and guises. We are Wisdom Talk Radio after all. And people search out wisdom in the hope that it will bring answers of some kind. I believe, in service to creating a more fulfilling life. And since this show is Wisdom Talk Radio, I invited my guest today, who is rooted in what I could call the philosophical tradition of wisdom mentorship. I'm very excited about it, so stay tuned with us. I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the quantum connection process. You can go to the Baca Institute to discover your unique connection with the essence of who you are by taking the quantum connection quiz. It's right there at the top when you first go on the website. And you might ask, why quantum connection? We are each designed to connect directly with Source in our own unique way. And knowing your style opens you up to a deeper connection with the fullness of who you are and with the universe. It's really the secret to creating what you want in your life, what you truly want in your life. Because who you are, and I say this each week, but it's true, because who you are is exactly who is needed. So my guest today is Simon Drew. He is an Australian poet, author, musician, photographer, and philosophical mentor. That's quite a list. I didn't get to even talk to you, Simon, before about my connection with music, but we'll do that perhaps. He is most well known for his work with the Practical Stoic podcast. That's quite a name too, which evolved into The Walled Garden, a podcast and online community where he and two colleagues explore a wide range of topics regarding philosophy, beliefs, ideas, and creativity. Simon's poetry, music, and writings often play in the realms of mysticism, prophecy, mythology, and wisdom, bringing the deepest insights of his consciousness to light in search of answers to life's most fundamental questions. His first book is The Poet and the Sage, and I hope that he will share a little about what that book is about and what that brings to us all. Welcome, Simon, to Wisdom Talk Radio. I'm very pleased to be able to be with you today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, Laurie. And I've been looking forward to this, and I can tell you're a beautiful soul. So I appreciate the invitation. So thank you.
Thank you. So we could start in a lot of different places, but I'd love for you to, so that we have some common ground perhaps, to speak first to, it's a big question, what is wisdom?
Yeah.
And maybe as a corollary to that, why Stoicism?
Yeah.
So two parts to that.
Sure. So I love that question because there are so many different ways that you can look at wisdom. There's so many different definitions that people hold in their own minds and their hearts about what it is. I guess I'll share a little bit about my journey coming to understand, I guess, like the definition of wisdom according to me and to my studies. I probably grew up feeling, as many do, that wisdom is maybe something that you gain over the course of your life, and certainly that's one element of it. I've certainly come to understand that there is a form of wisdom that uh, really can only come with time, right? Uh, when I started exploring philosophy, it was after a certain point in my life. It was my 20th birthday. I was invited to this seminar by this wonderful American motivational speaker. This was back in Australia, but he was making his tour, and a friend of mine came. It was my birthday, and we were at university studying music. And he kind of said to me, "Hey, listen, this guy, Eric Thomas, he's in town. You got to come over and see him with me." So on my birthday, we went over there to the city hall. We sat down and proceeded to be screamed at for about
Ooh.
like, you know, an hour of pure American motivation, right? And
I'm sorry.
no, it was beautiful because, here's the thing. I think a lot of people come to the deeper studies, such as philosophy, through the uh, more, I guess, like topsoil level motivation, speakers or literature and or just what we call general personal development. But one thing that he said there that day, it was information changes situations. And I don't know why, but that just stuck with me. Uh, and I mean this, Laurie, before that day in my life, I had probably read maybe like three or four books all the way through, right? The rest of it was just like I was a farm kid, I was going to the waterfalls, running through the forests and raising animals and
You were
playing
having
music. It's
experiences.
exactly, right? Exactly. Um and I never took myself for like a great studier or a great student of books. And when he said information changes situations, that just sent me in a whole different path. I was like, okay, I better get myself some books. I'm going to start exploring. So I started reading all this personal development literature because that's kind of where he led. Um, then I started to explore the Stoics because I got onto the whole personal development train, started listening to people like Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is a huge fan of the Stoics. I started reading Seneca to start, beautiful philosopher from Rome and a Stoic philosopher. And it's when I started exploring the Stoics that I really started to get a deeper sense about what wisdom is, because all of these ideas that the personal development leaders were talking about were basically just ideas taken from, you know, history, like from the great philosophers, from the great teachers of time. Um, and And so for the Stoics, they take a very kind of they just take it right back to basics. Like for example, philosophy. We can think of philosophy as this very kind of it belongs in the halls of academia. It's a very academic pursuit, and but really the Stoics said no, philosophy is just the love of wisdom. Going back to the real definition according to the Greeks, the love of wisdom. So if you love wisdom, you're a philosopher, right? If you're pursuing that, and then the Stoics have this beautiful definition of what wisdom is, and it's found in Diogenes, his works, the lives of the eminent philosophers, right? He talks about the Stoic philosophers, and he says that according to the ancient Stoics, wisdom is an understanding of things human and divine, you know, and that particular that particular definition has always stuck with me in a very deep level because you know if you really go deep into the Stoic philosophy, you start to get this sense. There is a kind of spiritual component to Stoicism. There's a very enlightening experience that you can have, the same with many spiritual traditions, where you start to recognize the existence of a kind of physical world with many manifestations in the world,
Okay.
and also almost a higher reality, right? Or a
Okay.
deeper reality.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yes.
there's a part of us that exists and can exist more deeply within the spiritual realm, right? And when you can bring those two worlds together, I mean that is kind of that stoic idea of like an understanding of things human and divine. Almost like, what is my duty in the divine realm? What is my duty
Mm.
in the realm of here and now, this physical world where I see things and I have relationships and I'm surrounded by beautiful people, or I've got careers to be engaged in. And so to me, wisdom is, if I could put it like this, it's a practical understanding of the human experience, what it's like to be human, what it's like to be you, and what how we might best contextualize ourselves within that experience
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and move forward in the most beautiful, honorable, meaningful way, right? How we might navigate that human experience.
So many
I
questions.
know there's
So
so
many.
much.
No, no,
I couldn't just give you like a
no,
definition,
no,
could
no.
I?
And that's great. No, no, it's just I wanted to be asking you about 14 questions as you speak.
Yeah, sorry.
And no, no, don't be sorry. It's you speak so beautifully and eloquently about it. And the piece that, well, one word first of all, maybe I could start with is the understanding of wisdom. So it's understanding. So, but because I used to want so much, because I started at a very young age with, you know, what the heck is life, and that took me into the realm of psychology. But understanding also kept me from the experiencing. It kept me in the realm of the mental body,
Mm.
and not and then I went into the emotional, and then from there went into, oh, what is the bigger picture, and into perhaps that the kind of the meta level or meta understanding of it. But when I hear you speak, you I feel you have a bigger, deeper connection with what it is to be human and how do we navigate this experience than simply an understanding.
I think yeah, that's a very interesting point. You know, one of the reasons I have such a hard time uh, articulating perhaps a strict definition of wisdom
Hmm.
is because it's an experiential thing, right? This is one of the reasons why I love the Stoics so much, is because they so beautifully reminded us that every moment calls for wisdom, right? So you can't just say, I have wisdom
Right,
and it is
like it's a done
this,
deal.
right? No, wisdom is actually that moment where you come to a crossroads and you think, I actually don't quite know what the next right step is, but I'm going to call on a higher part of myself to discern
Hmm.
the next right step, right? And to the Stoics, everything depends on the context, right? And it's very interesting in that way because they take it to the fullest extreme, meaning, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
They would say, you know what? As much as you don't like to think it, there might be a time where the appropriate action is for you to, I don't know, uh, think of the worst possible thing you could imagine, right? They'll say,
Leave your job, leave your marriage.
leave your job. Yeah, like all sorts of things. Like it's just and some people take this to the extreme and they like really hold that ground. But the point that they're trying to get across is it always depends on the moment, the place, the time, the surrounding events, everything.
everything. So it really does take into account the big picture, the whole
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
I will say in my world that the way I say it is energy always works appropriately. And so when I tune
Mm.
in and ask for that from that highest place, what is the next right step? And to have that discernment, because you mentioned discernment, so I really appreciate that you did. It may not be anything of what you think
Yes.
or what you thought, because you really are opening up into that whole undifferentiated field.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's almost like you need to create space
Uh-huh.
to allow the the answer to present itself without any uh baggage, right?
Ooh. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like I was teaching a young student of mine, a little kid who's learning the euphonium, and he's going to build up to tuba one day, and I can't wait to see that. Uh, but having a hard time focusing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like many kids today, it's an absolute epidemic. It's crazy out there for kids, and so many kids just really struggle to focus on the task, and they find themselves just being pulled around by all sorts of impulses and everything. And so
Mm-hmm.
I say to this kid, there's three words I want you to understand what they mean. Number one, impulse. Okay. You're going to get this impulse to act, right? To
Mm-hmm.
do something, right? Second word, action. Okay. Action is when we take that impulse and we do something with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps that impulse moves you to do something, right? So impulse is the thought that comes up, the motivating factor of your body and your mind that pushes you to do a particular thing. Action is when you do it. But then I said to him, like, the third word I want you to understand is discernment, right? Now, what we want to do, we want to create space between impulse and action. And in that space in between impulse and action, we're going to put discernment, right? And
Wow.
discernment means I get to decide how I act, right? And so we spent basically the whole lesson just like, okay, these three words. What does it mean again? Impulse. What does it mean? Right? I get pushed to do something. Okay, what's action? Okay, I do it. Okay, what do we want to put in that space? Discernment, right? And that's the Stoics. It's like just create a little bit of space,
Huh.
and in that space put discernment around what would be the appropriate way to act, and then act. And then the Stoics say, listen, once you've acted, right? So long as in that moment you discerned and to you in that moment you perceived that this would be the appropriate action, okay, then you just got to leave it behind. Don't
Mm.
look back at the results
Mm-hmm.
and be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, I was a terrible person because I did this or that. No, just work on that process, work on the process and refine it over time.
Okay. So can we dive a little deeper?
Please. Yeah.
This feels so juicy. Uh, so, okay, in that space, because I'm always talking about creating space and going into the unknown. And someone the other day who was interviewing me talked about spending time in the hallway, which I loved. That
Yeah.
idea of before you cross the threshold, take some time
It's a great
in the
image.
hallway.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
so? In that space, as you're creating space, I feel like people need to even learn how to do that and learn how to do that in a way that's you're not just filling it with what you already know. Because if we're
Yeah.
truly opening up to that bigger picture, that means that what might come in, and you mentioned this, it could be something you don't at all expect. What can come in is something from the unknown to you. In other words, because I've kind of parked in this space, in this open space, and allowed myself to have discernment. What does discernment even mean? I don't find that people generally understand that and understand how to have discernment because they're still
Yeah.
doing it from a logical, this makes more sense than that. That doesn't make sense, or that's scary. So and they think that's discernment. But I
Yeah,
don't think that that's what you mean by discernment. So I'd love for you to speak into that.
sure. Yeah. If I think about, yeah, and by the way, this is all stuff that I'm working on as well. The Stoics have a great name for the student who's making progress, right? It's a prokopton, right?
Say it
That's what
again.
they call prokopton, right?
Don't.
So it's kind of like, the student who is making progress towards
Hmm.
wisdom, if
Hmm.
wisdom is a place that we can arrive at.
As if.
Yeah. But we're always positing the ideal and then trying to make steps towards it, right? You know.
Interesting.
Um,
I
so
don't. So so I'm interested in that. Okay.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead. Anyway, but
Well, so when it comes to discernment, I think you're right. I think that there is the element of it that is relational,
mhm,
right? And we have to take into account those relations. As in, okay, I've got to make this decision. I need to look at the context of the scenario and the situation. And that's always going to mean relationships between you and other things, people,
mm,
experiences, right? So you have to pull those. Yeah, there's going to be that kind of more analytical discernment.
mhm,
What is the appropriate thing to do?
yeah.
I think finances are a great area of this as an example, because it's all just mathematics and logic, and so it's like, okay, what's the best financial decision here? Well, I have to take a look at my other budgets and everything, and then who's
Mhm,
relying on me and all of this sort of stuff, and then okay, maybe I have a better idea. But I think that there's the other element of it as well, which requires insight, and I think that's perhaps what you're talking about.
mm,
It's
mhm,
that it's uh, like I said before, trying to receive an answer unburdened by any sort of baggage, right?
mhm, mhm.
And I say receive because that's the way that it feels, right?
Yes.
Creating that space, uh, and allowing yourself, there was something that Jordan Peterson said a while ago that really I thought was just the best example and the best argument for this kind of discernment, right? Because I think we all get it on a visceral level. He said, if you really want to know how you can improve your life, you should sit on your bed and ask this question. What are some of the things that I'm doing in my life right now that I know if I continue to do, it's going to lead me down a very bad path, right?
Mm,
And he said, if you genuinely ask that question and you
mhm.
really want to know the answer to that
Yes.
question,
Right.
right, you'll definitely get it. And when you think about it, it's like, of course, because you live your life, you have all these experiences, you see
Mhm,
how you act, and you see when things don't quite go well. If you
mhm.
genuinely ask yourself, what are the things I'm doing I know is not going to lead to a good path? You'll get like 20 things immediately. And you
Right.
only if you really want to know the answer, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And we all know what it's like to ask a question ingenuinely, right? To
Yes.
ask a question just because we want to appear a certain way, or
Mhm,
um, or even just in the private of our own hearts, we ask the question, but we don't quite want to know the answer, or we're not ready to receive it. But if you come to it actually open your heart and just say, look, I'm ready to receive
mhm.
insight here that would be helpful. I think that's also a muscle you can develop, you know.
Absolutely. I talk often about receiving, and I actually the newsletter on LinkedIn, because I've just started a new newsletter, um, is all about receiving. So
Beautiful.
so
And
it,
in one context for you.
learning how to receive and being available or open to receive
Yeah.
that which is here for you, but you have to be willing to create space
Yeah.
in order to receive that. And for me, receiving is on multiple dimensions. So it may be like, oh, those things that we do know, and am I really willing to look at that? Am I willing to then even make the changes that those things suggest if I were to receive them.
Yeah.
And then it's, I move into the energetic and the quantum dimensions, and what could be wanting to step in the door if I were only to make myself available and open to receive it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important, and it's interesting how that kind of principle just exists on so many levels. Like,
Mhm,
we talk about creating space between impulse and action, right?
mhm,
To
mhm,
your point, make space. And within that space, you can receive, right? You can receive better insight or understanding around what might be the next appropriate thing. Even just this idea of, uh, you can make space in your mind and you can make space in the world. It's like if you live in a
mm,
cluttered house,
mhm.
the amount of insight that you will receive if you clean your house,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
Empty
now
a
you
drawer.
don't exactly empty a drawer, make some space there
Mhm,
so that the environment that you live in is conducive to uh to receiving, right?
mhm,
And in the same way that when we don't give ourselves space in our mind, you're just kind of flowing through life from one impulse to the other. You're kind of just being moved by life, right?
mhm, mhm.
Um, yeah, I think in the world, it's the same thing. It's just like, where can you make space? Make space in your finances. I was literally just thinking about this the other day because I've got so many things going on at the moment,
Mhm.
and I have a habit of cluttering. That's my big habit, right? In every area of my life. I I create because I'm an artist, right? And I just do things right. And then I realize, oh, I've got to make space again, right? And I was just sitting there the other day saying, okay, gotta make space in my finances, got to make space in my business, got to make space in my relationship, in all these areas, and just thinking about the ways that you can make space in all those different areas. It's so
And even
important.
just the space of, because I teach meditation, and I
Mm,
teach a particular form, but that's not so important as it is around how do I receive? Because
yeah,
in that space of meditation, if I'm busy, busy, busy with my thoughts, well, there's no space to receive something new.
yes,
I want to receive something new about myself, even beyond an insight into maybe it's a new program that I'm to create. Maybe it's a new direction that I'm to take my whole business in.
yeah,
Those require that willingness to release something to create space, but it's also just sometimes that mental that mental slash physical slash even emotional space
yeah,
to step into. Okay, let me step into nothingness. Let me step into the space between thoughts.
yeah, yeah. And even in things, I was speaking with a friend and somebody who's my mentor. His name is Rocco Jarman. You want to have a conversation, Laurie, you've got to speak with Rocco Jarman. Okay. This
Okay.
guy is on a whole nother level. Okay. uh, and I'm honored to be working with him and be mentored by him. But we were talking, and um, he was talking with me about how often we misunderstand recreation, right?
Mm,
Uh, think about the word
recreate.
recreation,
Hmm.
right? Uh, Sit down with your loved one and just like watch a movie, chill out, go to the park, go on a run. All of these activities that are like recreational, they create space in our lives where we're not so focused on the busyness, on all the things to do,
Hmm.
but rather we allow ourselves to get into a state where we can once again become creative, where we can once again create.
Hmm.
um, I think it's so important for artists. It's important for everybody, right? To
It,
have that
it is.
space, and
It
and
is.
look at the world we live in, right? Oh, hey, take it from somebody who lives in Orange County. This place is crazy. Okay, like
It is.
everybody is so busy. all the time.
Mhm.
Kids here like get put into like every after school program they can
Mhm.
possibly get put into. Like everything is just about productivity and like drive and making it bigger. And I come from Australia where it was much the opposite, right?
Mhm.
Much more of a focus on lifestyle, much more of a focus on enjoying
Mhm.
that's why so many Australians, like 90 something percent of the population live on the ocean, right? It's like
Right.
we're
Right.
like,
And
nope.
when they go on vacation, when they travel, partly because it's so far away, they go for a month or 6 weeks
Yeah.
or
Yeah, because and a lot of that is the Australian kind of system allows for that. Over here it's like like 2 weeks. If you have a
maybe.
standard job, it's like 2 weeks maybe.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, yeah. So
So for me, so important to recognize is that each of us have what I call an inner guidance system.
mm,
And in order to connect with that, so that we know the right next step, we have to create space. We have to be willing to receive that next step. We have to know what it feels like to have that inner guidance.
yeah,
That's part of the discernment for me. I get an idea that might be just what my personal self really, really, really wants. Yeah, that's not discernment. I have to
yeah,
have the discernment to say, maybe let me look beyond that.
yeah,
Let me receive what is in the highest for the whole situation, and then let me take action on that.
yeah. I think that's beautiful, and certainly feels like it's a muscle that you can develop, and you get to know. It's almost like you're trying to come to know the part of yourself that wants the best, right? We all
Yes.
have so many parts of ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Hmm.
Um, and there is a part of ourselves that if we really quiet the mind and ask for genuine guidance, there's a part of us that can kind of switch on and say, you know what, like if you're really aiming at the best,
Hmm.
here's what it might look like. And it might not be now, it might be
No,
then.
good
It
point.
might not be here, it might be there.
Hmm.
And again, you just have to kind of like receive that and think about whether or not you're willing to follow it.
Hmm.
And that's the grand adventure, right?
It
That's the
is.
great calling of life is, you know, try to understand how you might live a life where you can contribute to the highest of your capacity. You can bring so much meaning to your life and to other people's lives. You can give so much and you can become so much. There's so much that you're capable of,
Mhm.
but and we don't have to live as if that highest version of yourself is going to be particularly possible to achieve, right? To get there, but we can get closer. We
And
can
we
get
also
closer.
don't have to hold it out as simply, and I say underscore that word, an
Mm,
ideal, not to be realized,
yeah,
because it's also something that is not static.
yeah,
It's not an end goal. Really, it's, oh, what's the next step? And then, oh, what's the next step after that? For
yeah,
me, it all comes back to my my connection with source, my connection to being part of everything that is. And when my physical body passes on, yeah, I'll be in that state. But in this state, how do I do that? How do I remember? How do I remember that connection in everything? So that brings me to a question I want to ask you, because you speak about prophecy. And I'm really interested in, well, A, what you mean by that, because I love I love your turn of things when you go to explain something. And is it relevant for today?
yeah. Man, it's been a while since I've spoken about prophecy, actually. I'm in no position to do so. But I think that you can think about the Christianized version of what prophecy is. I did a little stint studying a Master of Divinity, and I would still love to go back and finish that degree at some point. But The reason I left, I felt the conversations I was having with the people who I was being mentored by or interviewing on the podcast and things like that was just like, man, these are better than any lectures I'm getting at university. I was like, um, but we did this assignment where we were exploring the prophets of the Old Testament.
Mhm.
Uh, One of the things that I discovered was that there's just this theme of these prophets kind of coming out and saying, "Listen, I can only speak the truth that God speaks through me, right? I can only that's it, right?
Mhm.
You're not going to get anything else, all
Mhm.
right? It's just the truth that God is speaking through
Mhm.
me." So on one level, I think that prophecy requires a completely unhindered commitment to perhaps what we've been talking about here, receiving that kind of wisdom, right?
Mhm.
And delivering it, unhindered by any sort of like, you know, uh, just no baggage attached to it.
Yeah.
Um, on another level, I think that there's always something just to me. I'm going off on
Mhm.
my own definitions here. To me, there is something prophetic about the artistic experience, right?
Ah.
Uh, I'll give you an example. Um, I think that art and all things artistic, for example, architecture, right? It's very artistic. Um, it gives us a picture of the human soul. And on a larger level, if you look at, say, the artistry of a particular decade or age,
Mhm.
it gives us a picture of the human soul at large, right? Like
Mhm.
one of the first places I visited uh, here in Los Angeles and Orange County when I moved here was the beautiful cathedral. Oh, I wish I could. I wish I remember what it's called. It's named after a saint. A beautiful Catholic cathedral in LA.
Mhm.
Um, it's the one that is basically brutalist architecture, right? And
I
so,
wish I could tell you what that is, and I don't know.
no worries. So, brutalist architecture is basically that hideous form of architecture. Uh, I
No, I
think it
just
was
don't know
around
what
like,
I know what our brutalist architecture is, but
okay, okay.
not what that cathedral is named.
Well, for those who don't know anyway, I think it's important to point it out. It's that kind of architecture that's just like all
It's brilliant.
concrete,
Yeah.
it's just these giant concrete slabs, right?
It speaks well to its name.
It does. Yeah, yeah. And when I went to see that cathedral, it just made me realize, wow, even even the Catholics, right, went
Mm.
through that period where the human soul was inspired by this kind of architecture. This tells you something about where we were. It
Sure.
tells you something about what we thought was beautiful. Uh, um, Now you go into a Gothic cathedral. Now you get a
Mhm.
much different sense of what the human soul was like at that time. A soul that would work an entire lifetime building something that they might not even see in their lifetime finished, right? A soul that could see the value of making something so incredibly beautiful that every generation after it would try to protect that
Mm.
artifact,
Mm.
right? uh that it would be this picture of just perfect union between the physical world and the spiritual realms, and you walk into a space like that and everything calls you to look up, and you get somebody to show you around and they'll point out, this lighting fixture here is off by like a millimeter, and that's to show that there is no perfection other than God, right? That
Mm.
we can't. Now, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think in the same way, you look at art, you look at architecture, you look at the creations of artists over time, you get a sense of where we've been. You also get a sense of where we're going.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that the kind of prophetic tradition is one let's say you have a prophet. I think a prophet is just somebody who is deeply sensitive to the matters of the human soul in this particular moment in time and age, right? Incredibly sensitive to the movements of people, uh, and perhaps has that deeper connection to the spiritual realm where they can say, you know what, based on my senses and and the insight that I'm receiving here, here's the direction we're going.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I can see that we're already on that trajectory. It's just cause and effect. If you
mm-hmm.
keep on doing this, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. Like many people would disagree with me. I think there's an element that could be argued of a kind of divine intervention, like you're the guy now, go tell him this, right? Like,
Yeah, I think so.
and sometimes it can feel like that, right?
Hmm.
But I guess in terms of my work, I see it much more as like I'm just trying to open my mind to receive the the work that is coming through me.
It's got to
And
come
when I
through you.
started writing
You're
that poetry,
unique.
Laurie,
Hmm.
it just came out as very weird, strange stuff. I'm like, whoa,
Hmm.
you know, it just when you feel moved as an artist to create something and it comes out as
Hmm.
with kind of prophetic language and everything. Yeah, it's
So I want to bring in another word.
yeah,
I,
please.
I know we're running out of time, but I don't want to leave this out. And that word is surrender,
Mm,
because there's an aspect or an element of in order to receive, truly receive from the dimensions that you're speaking about, we do need to surrender to it. And I don't mean give up. Give up is not surrender.
yeah, yeah,
Surrender in this regard is quite active. It's an active stance. I am available to receive. Therefore, that means I'm surrendering. I'm surrendering my expectations, my not my abilities, but my having to know before I even receive what it is, my constraints. I'm surrendering all of that into this moment so that I make myself available to receive from presence, from God.
yeah,
And in that way, well, that takes a lot. That takes a big commitment.
yeah. Because you kind of have to follow through with that, right? I mean, it's it's
That seems to be the piece of it, yes.
yeah, I think you're exactly right. Surrender is such a beautiful word. You know, it's kind of like a sacred surrender. It's a commitment to, you know what? I'm going to step back and let God take the reins here, right?
Mhm,
Of what would be or whatever, your perception is of that higher realm of
mhm, right.
connectivity that we have with the divine.
Mhm, mhm. And we don't step out of the way because we really are a co-creator. It
Yeah.
really is, it has to be a partnership. So we surrender to receive, and then we get to take the action. We're not moving from impulse into action. We're going from having received into creation, into
Yeah.
manifestation.
And it almost sounds like what you're talking about is devotion, right?
I haven't thought about that. Say
To
more.
to be devoted to that cause. Devotion to me is to recognize that there is higher insight at work in your life, right? Uh, and when you give it space, when you receive that wisdom for your life about what might be the next step, and it's not always going to be convenient, and it's not always going to be easy. But devotion is saying, no matter what, I'm going to commit myself to being a part of that relationship and doing the next, just that sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof, right? I'm I'm gonna wake up today and I'm going to do the next thing that I can to participate in this calling or this movement of your life,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
That that's so moving to me, on so many levels. I mean, I feel the energy of it right up my back, and because I am in this moment, maybe I am in every moment, but in this moment, I'm very aware of a new project that I am creating that I have received, and that I have no idea how the next step's going to happen.
Yeah.
And in that, because I've taken this step and that step, some things are starting to come in and going, wow, how did that happen? And I don't have to know, and I can't know, but I
Yeah.
think it
Yeah.
is out of that willingness to keep the forward motion going, to keep
Yeah.
taking that right next step, which you have so beautifully spoken to today, Simon.
Hey, no, I appreciate Laurie. I actually, do I have time to share one more thing with you?
Sure.
Well, I think I had a particularly uh, good example of that in my own life a few months ago. It must have been actually, it must have been about a year ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was a point where, uh, like I'm getting set up here in America. I'm trying to get more connected in the culture, more deeply embedded in my area here in Orange County. And I'm a musician, and I went quite a long time without without ever doing gigs for jazz music that I love. I love doing it. And I went quite a long time because I came over here, just trying to get set up. Just if anybody's ever moved countries, they know it's just like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that you have to do just to get
Mm-hmm.
established there, right? And I was thinking, I think it's about time to get back into performance. I want to start, I want to find some musicians. I want to, put together a band, all this sort of stuff. And I realized, I learned one day that there's this brand of horns. So I play the trumpet, and there's this brand that makes brass instruments called Olds. They make these beautiful instruments, and they had factories in Fullerton, the town that I now live in, right? Where
Okay.
they made these horns back in like the 60s and 70s. Um, and I kind of had this impulse. I was like, oh my gosh, I'd love to get myself some Fullerton made horns. And it was not the right financial decision at the time. It was not the right, there were so many reasons why it would not have been the right timing for me to invest in buying myself like three new horns, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But something about it, I just said, you know what? No, I'm doing this, right? Like I have to. I felt like I have to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just giving myself that permission to invest a little bit in this thing that I knew would be deeply meaningful for me, giving myself permission to do that, I kid you not, it was only within the next month that I was walking around in Fullerton with Jen, my wife, and we came across these three musicians who were jamming, and they were playing music at this restaurant, and just beautiful jazz musicians. And I went up and I had a chat with them, and the connection was immediate. Within the next week, I had booked a gig with them
Oh.
over at this other venue. I'm about to launch this studio here in Santa Ana, and we're going to be putting on three concerts together over next weekend. And the amount of connections and insight into the industry and the support and all this that I've received from these musicians
Mm-hmm.
has been invaluable to my soul and to my
Mm.
path. And
Yes.
it was a complete validation to me that sometimes the thing that doesn't really make logical sense makes the
Mm-hmm.
most sense, because you feel like this, I have, if I'm devoted to this path, something is calling to me right now. I have to take a leap and a risk. And out of that risk, you have to trust that something will come out of it. And you just need to
Mm-hmm.
be open to receiving what that next something is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Oh, that's such a wonderful story, Simon, and replete with really the teachings that we have been talking about
yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so
I love
happy
you,
for
Laura.
you.
This has been beautiful.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, there's so many other things that I think we can talk about.
Oh
I'd
yeah,
love to have you back on the
I'd
show.
love to come back. Yeah.
And because there's all sorts of things that we can get, all sorts of mischief I think we can get into.
Oh yes.
Can you tell people how to find you and also
Sure.
how to find the poet and the sage?
Yeah, definitely. So there's many places. If you look up, Simon Drew on online, you'll probably find a whole bunch of works from this artist in England. There's a guy who does these drawings for like postcards, and he's
Ah,
this wonderful artist in England.
it's
Darn
not
you,
you.
Simon Drew. The other, is taking up most of the Google space, but that's okay. So if you go to simonjedrew.com, that's my website. But if you're interested in what I'm doing right now, where I'm actually at right now, focused on, there's two places. Number one, it's thewalledgarden.com. Walled garden. People, because of my accent, people think I'm saying the world garden, uh, but I'm saying the wild garden, right? So,
Like having a wall around your garden.
exactly. um, that's the podcast and the philosophical community that we're putting together with just beautiful philosophers from all around the world.
Mm.
Uh, and then the studio that I'm now opening in Santa Ana, Orange County. If anybody is in like Los Angeles or this Southern California area, I would love to see you come on out. I'm opening this beautiful studio. It's called the Sanctuary Studio for the Arts and Humanities.
Wow.
And we're going to be putting on performances here. I'm doing a mentorship program with young artists, helping them to get their foot in the door in the industry, meditation sessions, all sorts of
Will you
things.
invite me out?
I would love to have you out. I would love to have you. And there's a podcasting studio. So, there's plenty of things happening here. So you can go to thesanctuarystudio.org. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, and I know you have, Lisa, you sent to me a link for the first three chapters of your book.
Yes. So the book, you can purchase that from thewalledgarden.com/store.
Okay.
It's one of those things where I don't have the book. If I'm completely honest with you, I'm not even certain that that store is up and running right now, right?
Okay. Well, but this
But
will be a
I,
few months out by the time this
but
goes live.
yeah, and
Or
I'll
when
tell
we're
you what. Look, if anybody's interested in the book, I put a lot of work into it being a very beautiful book as well. I designed everything, the cover, I designed the way that it's designed. So it's got this, beautiful hardcover material bound, gold
Hmm,
etching, everything. It's a
okay.
very special work.
So we can get
If
that on,
people
on
want to buy it,
Amazon.
not yet, right? I haven't figured that out yet, but
Okay.
just email me. If anybody wants, just email me simon@thewalledgarden.com or simon@thesanctuarystudio.org. Just email me. We'll figure it out, right? I'll get you a
Okay.
copy.
Okay. And hopefully by the time this episode goes live, you will have sent me, hey, here's the
Yes.
most current links because I include
Yes.
those all in the show notes.
Sure, I will do that. Yeah.
Great. Simon, thank you so much for everything that you've offered today. I feel like you have such beautiful clarity in how you speak about complex ideas. And it really, I think, offers a lot to our listeners, to our audience. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to you, Laurie. Yeah, it's been absolutely beautiful conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. And I want to thank our audience too. Thank each of you for your time today and being with us and joining us. And I want to encourage you to join us here regularly for more wisdom and discovery and illumination. And if you've enjoyed the episode, please leave us a review because when you do that, that lets the audience, the bigger audience, know, oh, here's something of interest that could have impact on you, and that helps transform the world. And that's what we're here for. And for more for you about your own inner connection, your own, what I call your quantum connection, you can head over to the Baca Institute, and that's the bacainstitute.com, and take the quantum connection quiz today. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.